Hello, world. Welcome to tonight's community conversation. We're super excited to have you all. We have these wonderful guests right here. Can we have all of our guests wave to the audience? We appreciate all of you joining us today, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. It is much appreciated. These are our Tuesday community conversations, and we try to make these as interactive as possible. So make sure while we are having our conversation, you participate too. Throw in those questions, throw in those comments. And thank you already. We're getting quite a few followers. Thank you, Mythos, DWT369, Faulty Code Gamer, Mr. Cappy Sparks, Farfew Giants, who we interviewed recently. Thank you to everyone there. My name is Michael Zhitkov. I am the founder and executive director of Potions and Pixels nonprofit. We are a nonprofit organization based out of beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina, where we're broadcasting today. Our mission is to utilize games to create social impact. So I invite you all to definitely check out our website where you can find out about all the cool projects we do, from designing games for the city of Charlotte, like we have right here. You'll be hearing about this soon, to making youth programs, workforce development programs, everything with games, you name it, we do it. But before we jump in with this amazing panel that we have today, thank you, Charlotte Gaymers, for hosting. Appreciate it. We do want to briefly talk about some of the prior conversations that we have had and some of the upcoming events we have. So I'm going to switch it over. Hey, Master this Chris, it's a PvP. I appreciate your love and support there on that side. It's gonna be really hard for me to read all these folks. I appreciate you. Mastodon Avenger, that's what it is. Mastodon Avenger, I got it. All right, so let's check out some of the prior events we did. When we started our series, we should say all of these conversations are sponsored by our good friends at Lowe's. We really appreciate them. They value these types of conversation. We know you do too, and we appreciate their sponsorship. Our first community conversation was Black Voices in Gaming. You can find these conversations available still on our Facebook and YouTube page, so I invite you to check them out. Our next conversation was Women in Gaming with the wonderful folks at the Athena Alliance CLT. You'll probably notice we do multiple events with the Athena Alliance today. This event originally was going to have some Athena Alliance members participating, but due to some scheduling conflicts, that couldn't happen. But we invite you to definitely check them out in the future for sure. And Faulty Code Gamer, say, hey, that's me. Yeah, thanks, Faulty Code, for participating in that. We really appreciate your involvement. We followed that with custom game controllers. We explored the art, technology, and people behind custom game controllers. Again, shout out to Lowe's, and also a shout out to Red Bull. Red Bull's been a sponsor of ours for many events, and they threw in an arcade stick as part of the giveaway. So we were excited to see the winner playing with it and posting about it this week. The next conversation we had was Games to the Rescue, where we explored how games are being used to fight against coronavirus. Yes, indeed, folks, if you weren't unaware of this, outside of social distancing and wearing masks, you can actually fight coronavirus by playing games like Eterna and Foldit. Actually playing those games results in lab work to potentially find some solutions to this crisis, so check those out. We recently hosted Black Voices in Esports, a great conversation that me and these gentlemen have had before, and we kept on telling ourselves, hey, when are we going to record this? When are we going to get this on the record? So that was our opportunity to do that. So please check out that conversation. Hispanic Voices in Gaming is coming up in October. You've heard us talking about this one for quite a while now. Julio E. Nazario, a North Carolina-based board game designer, who designed the game you see there in the background. It's called Control, spelled CTRL. It is available at Target right now, only for $25. You'll be surprised at how much cool content you get for such a good value. He is on a roll right now. He's got games being published left and right, so we're excited about that conversation. And of course, today's conversation is really special because it is a two-part conversation. So make sure you join us here next week, again, with our friends, the Athena Alliance, Charlotte Gaymers Network, and PvP Hub Charlotte. We will make sure to share all of their link information, and it's already in the event. But right now, make sure to like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff to, again, the Athena Alliance CLT, Charlotte Gaymers Network, PvP Hub Charlotte. We'll dig into each one of those groups in a moment, but we love and appreciate them and their partnership here. This conversation will continue on Tuesday, and it will primarily focus on Tell Me Why Chapter 2 and 3, and that'll conclude Tell Me Why. It's a 3-chapter series. and we can't wait to get into that conversation. If you enjoy these types of conversation, we hope you will join us for Indie Game Club. This is our weekly series that we host multiple times during the week, where it's like a book club, but for indie games. If that sounds like your thing and you like these types of in-depth discussions on a wide variety of topics, we invite you to participate. On Mondays, we play the games. On Thursdays, we discuss them with a group similar to this. We get a group of 5 or 6 people, discuss the games in depth. So hope you'll join us for that. Outside of talking about games, of course, we love playing them, right? We gotta love playing games. So you can join us for our online game nights, which occur on Wednesdays and Saturdays, where we play video games and board games. That is part of our Discord channel, which is in the description. We would invite you to join that. Also join the Discords for Charlotte Gaymers Network, which is always popping. Athena Alliance and PvP Hub. There's a lot of activity going on, so you can't say you're bored during this time when we're all sitting at home. There's plenty to do. On Wednesdays, we also have the Potions and Pixels Online League Smash and Learn events. This is an opportunity to learn about different characters, levels, techniques. It's a way to level up your skills. Chris, one of our guests, I know is quite the good Smash player too. So I'm excited to do that. And Zach as well. Appreciate you coming in to that. So this is a free league, completely open to all skill levels, all ages. We also do our typical King of the Ring sessions on Fridays. Last week we did a women-only arena called Queen of the Ring, and we have Team of the Ring coming up this Friday, so make sure to check out. Speaking of Queen of the Ring, we want to congratulate our 7 leading ladies who participated there. All of them did a phenomenal job. You can still watch that on Facebook, YouTube. And we have upcoming 2 tournaments coming up this Saturday. There's a lot of stuff. I know this is a lot for me to try to go through. I said I was going to do it fast, and it's just so much stuff. Silver tier tournament for our silver tier participants, as well as new participants. If you are new, you can totally participate. Even if you've never played Smash before, as long as you have the game and the system and all that good stuff, you can sign up at potionsandpixels.com/league, potionsandpixels.com/league, join our Discord, and join the bracket. And we will also have our bronze level tournament. So we got a lot of events and a lot of new events to announce. But of course, you all are here for our community conversation, LGBT Voices in Gaming, with this amazing group. Can we wave one more time, panelists? Can we wave to the audience one more time? We have this tradition, if you're new to following us and watching, where every time we introduce one of our guests, we clap it up. Just because we're isolating doesn't mean we can't still have that community feel to it. So I know these amazing folks can introduce themselves way better than I can, so I'm going to kind of toss this up in the Brady Bunch fashion, if I can. I don't know if they can see me, but I'll call out their names and they can introduce. So let's start off with the top right, Mr. Johnny Barrio. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hey all, my name is Johnny Barrio. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I identify as a cis gay male, and I'm very, very excited to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And Johnny, we should also say that you are one of the co-founders of Charlotte Gaymers Network as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Mike. Yeah, so we're really excited to be here on the stream today and talk about the work that we're doing and why it's so important.
Yeah, and this conversation, originally Johnny and I met through a mutual Facebook friend and really hit it off, and we were excited about this. He was a guest on our first episode of Indie Game Club, and we were talking. I had been thinking about doing an LGBT Voices in gaming event in line with some of the other events we were doing, but he was like, he reminded me about Tell Me Why, and he was like, man, we should really have this conversation. So I really appreciate him pushing on that front. And thanks as well, I should say, I am a cisgender straight male, he, him pronouns. So I think that helps the context of the conversation. So thank you, Johnny Barrio. We really appreciate it. All right, next, Jenny Gunn, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi all, how are y'all doing? I am Jenny James Gunn, and I don't know if it's not switching screens, but anyway, I'm involved with the Charlotte Pride, the national organization of women, Charlotte, and I do 2 podcast shows on Facebook live a week. One is called Coffee and Pan Dulce, and the second show, that's a follow-up show, is Two Queers in a Truck. And it's the second one tends to try to be comedic. The first one is more community service, talking about local elections, COVID, anything like that. trying to be of service and keep people informed as much as we can in these trying times. I'm not too much of a gamer. I'm not going to lie. This is going to be an interesting conversation, but I do know a lot about being trans. I am a trans woman. I've been transitioning socially for almost 5 years and physically for about 4. And I'm also pansexual, so I'm hearts over parts. So, but other than that, I'd love to weigh in and hear and learn a lot more about gaming tonight.
Thank you so much, Jenny. We really appreciate you being here and looking forward to the discussion. And let's clap it up for Jenny. Awesome. Let's move to the last person on the top row here, Mr. Christopher Jones of PvP Hub Charlotte. Chris, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, sir. As he said, my name is Christopher Jones, and I am the founder of PvP Hub Charlotte. We basically we are an organization that promotes couch play. We use our events more so as a way to bring people together. Recently, we've been working with a charter school called Mountain Island Day, and doing events as an incentive for kids as long as they're behaving. Just as a way, like I said, as an icebreaker. We found that it helps a lot of kids who, struggle with autism or are just socially awkward. So it's been a way of, like I said, bringing everybody under one umbrella and conversing. Outside of PvP Hub Charlotte, this exact school I do work at as an after school teacher, which is why I was late, sorry. and I work as a co-chair for the Ryan White Planning Body. And for those who don't know who they are, they work in tandem with the health department, and we basically allocate funds for people living with HIV. So whether that be with help with getting medications, transportation, everything under that umbrella, we help with that. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that, Chris, and thank you for that introduction. Appreciate your work. Let's clap it up for Chris. Awesome. Let's move to, actually, let me thank a couple followers real quick here. Thanks, Rox FGC, Kyler Fox 89, Nerdy Cuts, and Oh No You Didn't. Love it. All right, awesome. I love reading these names. That's part of the fun challenge. And thank you all the people who are participating in the chat. The chat is like streaming so fast I can't even keep up with it. So we really appreciate it, and we will get to your questions as well. So keep those questions coming. Keelan, let's go to you, my friend. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, my name is Keelan. I also go by Charlotte. I am a gender fluid gay human being. I game 8 hours a day. I'm not joking. I will stay up till probably 4 a.m. Yeah, that's about all I have to say to myself. I recently met Johnny here, who introduced me to you, who introduced me to so many other people, and I'm just forever grateful, and I'm happy to be here.
Love it. Appreciate you being here, Keelan. Thank you so much. Let's clap it up for Keelan, everyone. Clap it up. All right, Nicole, let's go to you. Can you please introduce yourself, please?
Hey guys, I'm Nicole. I'm a college student studying computer science, and I've also been working with Target for 6 years. I identify as bisexual, she, her. I've been gaming since I can remember, diapers maybe. That's about it. See, I don't do as many cool things as you guys.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. You're just too humble. Let's clap it up for Nicole. Thank you so much for being here, Nicole.
Thank you.
It. And last but certainly not least, we have the co-founder of Charlotte Gaymers Network, Zach Smith. Should I call you Zach or William? What should we call you, Zach?
So Will Smith got very old by the time I was in 3rd grade. So I go by Zach.
Okay.
William is my legal name, I say. Yeah, so my name is Zach Smith. I am, as Michael said, the co-founder of the Charlotte Gaymers Network. We've been going on for about, I'd say 2 months now, maybe 3. We started beginning of July. It kind of just sort of started out as, a group of maybe 10 or 12 friends that had a, group chat on Facebook going, always talking about games. And, as COVID started, I think we saw a lot more people joining the chat. A lot more people were getting interested in gaming as a way to sort of, escape the world and have something to do during quarantine. And as it started to grow, we, saw an opportunity and, a niche that was missing in Charlotte. And it's been really, really hitting it off. We have about close to 300 members on Facebook and already over 100 in our Discord in like 2 months. So, I mean, it's been awesome growth, and we're really excited. And our Discord is like super active, which is really awesome. And we've made some great friends, and, it's been a lot of fun. So we're really proud of where we come, and we're excited to be here today.
Super excited to have you. Let's clap it up for Zach. Appreciate it so much. And in fact, let's continue with this energy and go straight into that, because I think what's really exciting in the Charlotte gaming community is we're seeing so many fresh voices enter the scene, or who have been in the scene but are now kind of formalizing it with organizations. With the Athena Alliance kind of forming in 2019. PvP Hub was also formed in 2019, right, Chris? And Charlotte Gamers Network has its roots kind of in 2019, right? So we're all kind of...
I would say, yeah, Johnny and I met in 2019, and like that little friend group we had probably, end of 2019 is where we all started getting together. So I would say our first 10 members, probably gathered in 2019, and we made it official mid 2020. So
yeah, and I don't think it's like a coincidence that we have so many organizations that are focused on traditionally underrepresented groups in the gaming community, right? We have the Charlotte Gamers Network focusing on LGBT gamers, Athena Alliance on female gamers, PvP Hub. You guys, cover everybody, but I think what's significant to discuss is the fact that, having Black leadership, Black business owners. I think we, Chris, you and I, along with, yes, clap it up for that. We need to thank the Athena Alliance, Emmy and Eve, and all those who organized a Black Excellence Celebration Month in February, where we got a chance to work together on and bring in some developers and all sorts of different groups. So I think that's worth talking about, that we're seeing a lot of historically marginalized voices, however we want to say it, now kind of speaking, for lack of a better term. Can you guys, I do want to dig in a little bit more with Johnny and Zach for that part first before we bring in everybody else. Can you all talk a bit more in depth about the formation of Charlotte Gamers Network and why you felt it was necessary to create this organization rather than not have an organization or continue working with other organizations? What was the significance about kind of taking your own journey there?
So, I mean, that's a great question, Michael. I think the prominence of why the Charlotte Gamers Network was created was simply because of the fact that the LGBTQ community always tries to find places where they are accepted, and that's just the bottom line. When we look at, for instance, the LGBT dollar, it's one of the strongest of any demographic in the country. People, especially in our community, want to remain and stay loyal to organizations and venues that support them. With the onset of COVID-19, the very sad realization for a lot of us was that where we were able to socialize, where we were able to meet people, where we were able to just bring our friends together and have these really fun occasions and all of that just ended overnight. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I think the Charlotte Gamers Network has been so successful in its mission is that we are building that bridge where in the era of COVID-19 and the era of an unprecedented pandemic, we can still connect the LGBTQ community in these virtual worlds where, we can all meet up for a couple hours a day, just like we would have at a bar, like we would have outside and at an event or anywhere else. And we can have just as much fun there as we are if we would have been meeting outside or wherever. And I think a lot of people are starting to understand, what that looks like now. I think a lot of people are starting to become more integrated into what gaming is, into the gaming community, and a lot of stigmas that were trailing our community are kind of, all of a sudden disappearing because people are seeing that as a legitimate avenue to have that social experience with folks, where, necessarily, if you want to be safe, if you're immunosuppressive, if you can't be going to a bar or a restaurant, your social options are limited, and to be able to give people that opportunity to be, whether it's in a massively multiplayer online game or whether it's a 10-minute game on Call of Duty, you're still chatting with your friends, you're having a great time, and you're having a whole lot of fun. And I think that's a big reason, not only why our organization was founded, but why our organization is thriving during the era of COVID-19.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And we have a comment supporting that in the chat. Scarlett Aeon, friend of the show, says, especially in the South, to your point about the need for these types of spaces, especially in the South, looking for those spaces where they can be accepted and heard is difficult at times. Plenty of heart emojis. We appreciate that, Scarlett. Zach, continuing on Johnny's point there, I think what's interesting about y'all's Discord is how friendly, welcoming, active it is. It really does feel like a family. I encourage everyone who's watching this to jump on the Discord. And we should say, with all of the organizations represented here, that this isn't, although these are Charlotte organizations, I imagine you all are welcoming to people from anywhere who are watching this to join y'all's groups, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Glad to hear that. Us as well. So Zach, talking about that a little bit more, I think the fact that you all have set a place where people can come as they are, be who they are, have conversations, discuss whatever they want to be, gaming or otherwise. Can you elaborate a bit more about why that specifically is important versus the idea of just having these conversations in other spaces, the necessity of having a space for people to come as they are?
Sure. Well, so I think there's something definitely interesting about having a place like Discord too. On top of there being, COVID going on and people wanting to meet digitally, I personally have had a hard time finding, LGBTQ plus friendly spaces that aren't in a bar. And so I definitely think, the option of all of this going digital, and I see everyone nodding their heads on the screen along with me. So I think you all know that feeling. It's definitely created.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Zach, but can you elaborate on that for those who are listening?
Sure,
like,
yeah.
What does that mean exactly?
Straight people, they can go to a coffee shop, they can go to a bookstore, they can go to, any area and feel accepted and feel like, they can be who they are. LGBT queer people, that's been a struggle, in the past of having safe spaces, and a lot of, the safe spaces that I know of tend to be, a gay bar. Where it's loud music, pulsing music, dancing, drinking, and everyone's drunk and having a good time, but there is a severe lack of normal spaces. I mean, there aren't LGBTQ designed bookstores that I know of, coffee shops, places where like-minded and people who are the same can go and feel safe without discrimination and without being harassed. So it's definitely been really eye-opening to have these people come into our Discord and not only talk about games but talk about their personal lives and relate to things outside of just gaming. It's been a great and really eye-opening experience, and we've had people say thank you so much for creating this community. And I think it's something a bit akin to Stonewall, the kickball league. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but it's an LGBTQ plus kickball league. When I lived in Wilmington, North Carolina, I was actually a part of the team that helped start it in Wilmington. And so I was not, the one doing it, but, all my friends were doing it, and we were joining the group, and I was part of the first teams. And a lot of the things we heard was, oh, it's so great to have a place that is not a bar, where we can all communicate and hang out. And so I think, during a time of COVID, I almost feel like we caught lightning in a bottle here, because, we have a non-bar setting for LGBTQ people to come together and talk about things that they enjoy, and it's also not in a bar. And it's just been kind of, the perfect storm of being able to connect with people, in the times that we're facing. So, I mean, we've been really enjoying it. It's been a light in my life recently, either to be able to, connect with everyone and really, see our community grow, and seeing people like Keelan and Nicole come in. We've gotten close with Keelan over this time. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing. I feel like I've actually grown closer to these people during not being able to see them personally, just because, it's just been such a great, space for everyone. So
that's fantastic to hear. And I think that's important to reemphasize. I mean, that's kind of the reason we wanted to do this series of events that we were talking about at the beginning of the program, because as we practice social distancing, social isolation is a real issue that we need to be talking about during this time. So I think having spaces where you're among family and friends and like-minded individuals who understand you in a deeper, meaningful way, I think is really important. And we should note that all the organizations here are also welcome to allies participating as well. So we do want to be clear about that. You know, from personal experience joining these organizations myself, they're incredibly great Discord community and
Absolutely. That's one of the big things about our Discord too, is, you know, all people are invited. That's, you know, one of the biggest messages we want to bring across. I actually credit this to Emmy when she first joined our Discord. Yes, she had like a whole idea of adding, you know, every letter in the LGBTQI plus, you know, spectrum having its own channel in Discord, and we have an ally channel as well. So seriously, everyone's invited to join. When we love having new members, and we are like a family there. So please join our Discord. We'd love to have you.
Please do. And again, for those watching, we will be sharing all the social media information for all these organizations tomorrow, as well as a link to this. So you can definitely find that. But you can also look it up right now and do it. You know, do it now if you can. That's my recommendation. Keelan, I'm curious as far as how you found the Charlotte Gamers Network and what brought you to the organization, what excited you about it, and what's been your experience so far?
Okay. I first found CGN, I think it was a sponsored ad through Facebook, was how I found it. And there was a Discord server, and I was just like, it says Charlotte, it says Gamers, it says Network, I'm in. That was basically it, because I don't have a ton of gay friends my age, especially those who play video games, who, like, I can, you know, meet up with and play Smash Brothers.
That's kind of surprising, to be honest.
Well, okay,
Chris and I are like surprised.
A lot of my friends are straight friends that I have, and I love them to death. But there's just this certain feeling that you have when you're around people of, I don't want to say your own kind because it's the rude way of saying that, but it's almost like having a room full of other gay people, and I can just kind of like boom say whatever I want without it being, oh whoa, that's like, you know, it's kind of a liberating feeling. So when I first joined the Discord, I introduced myself, and they're like, welcome to the family, and I'm just like, oh, okay, I have a chosen family now. I'm a really excitable person, so when I joined it, I immediately felt welcomed, and then I went to my first event with them, and I fangirled for a different reason other than the fact that I was meeting the people in CGN for the first time. But I had a blast. I got my tail beaten in Smash by Zach multiple times and enjoyed every second of it. Yeah.
I love to hear that, and I think that's also a testament to all the CGN leadership and all of the team that you have there to establish such a welcoming environment. Real quick, I do want to read a couple comments here. Athena Alliance CLT, they're about to hop into their trivia event, so we want to wish them well. They say they'll catch up with everyone later and be in and out. We appreciate that. Scarlet Aeon saying the dynamic is different in the community because they just sort of get the things you've been through at times. Faulty Code Gaming saying exactly, D. Yes, so those are important points to bring in there. Nicole, how about you? What brought you to CGN? And I think speaking, you know, one of the things that we also believe is important, highlighting female voices on the gaming side as well. Can you talk a bit about that? Not only the gaming side, being a woman, being part of CGN.
So Keelan actually kind of introduced me to everybody. So I haven't really been a part of this long. But the way everybody, like, how nice and sweet everybody is, like, I feel like they're already like longtime friends. And it's especially nice going back to the thing of you know, during COVID feeling alone. I've definitely been feeling it, like not myself, but you know, connecting with everybody and be able to like talk for, like Keelan said, talk freely. You know, you don't feel that like kind of like, I guess you could say depression or you know, that loneliness.
Sure.
So it's definitely, I love it. It's definitely really been nice.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah. Again, folks, if you're watching right now and you're not already joining, I got to ask you what you're doing right now. Open up a second tab, open up a second window. Make sure PvP Hub, Athena Alliance, CGN, Charlotte Gamers Network. Make sure to check it out. Jenny, I really appreciate you being here and bringing your story and your perspective. I want to ask you. I know you said you're not much of a gamer yourself, but when you heard about Tell Me Why, which will be the second half of this conversation, we should say for those watching, Tell Me Why is the first game from a major studio and major publisher to feature a transgender main character. What were your thoughts when you first heard about that? And I guess we'll save what your thoughts were about the game, but what were your thoughts just about that? Was that kind of significance to you, hearing about that in the game industry?
Yeah, I'd never heard of anything like that. So when Johnny Barrio messaged me and asked me not only to do this show, but to introduce me to the game, I went over to his place and seen it for the first time. It's fascinating from the fact that one of the main characters not only is trans, but it's funny that the character is trans, but I don't think the story's necessarily completely about trans. And we'll get into that later, but definitely I'm excited when you see our society be able to openly talk about a transgender character, whether it's a movie or a TV show, and it not be a punchline or a joke, and actually be a serious, legit character with depth of character, and not making fun of it. There's so many trans characters in Hollywood have been played by cis actors, and from what I understand, that the voice actor in this is a trans male. So I do have a lot of respect for that. But I am very excited, and I like the first chapter that I saw. I love the representation of it. I think it's groundbreaking, and it'll introduce people to a side of trans, especially being a trans male. Often you see a lot of the male to female characters like Caitlyn Jenner, I Am Jazz, that sort of thing. The fact that they used a trans male and a twin, and the twin is cis, I think is a very important dynamic. It was neat to see.
Yeah, we're super excited to. I'm just waiting to get into that part of the conversation there too. So we appreciate your perspective here. Before I go into some other additional stats about representation, Chris, I want to talk to you about PvP Hub, CLT, and I do want to mention, shout out to Bellcross, also part of PvP Hub. He said, we've also signed up with Extra Life to donate with local children's hospitals here in Charlotte and the Miami, Florida area. So really appreciate you all doing that for sure. Chris, so your organization isn't strictly, we should say, focused on LGBTQ issues. It's more so focused on PvP, player versus player, that couch experience. But knowing you and your team that you have, I think it's fair to say your perspective as a gay black male factors into kind of creating this welcoming environment and creating an atmosphere where people feel comfortable competing against one another and feel kind of relaxed and at ease. Can you talk a bit about like the motivation behind PvP Hub?
Yes. So I'm not a Charlotte native. I moved down here from Washington, D.C. And moving down here as an adult, it's a lot harder to make friends and build a network, especially in the gaming community. And then being a black gay male who doesn't really frequent bars and clubs and things of that nature, I spent a lot of time alone. And I really didn't have, friends in a network down here. So, and like I said to you guys, when I talked to you earlier, being kind of introverted, the motivation to really go out and do things like that really wasn't there. Bellcross, Bernard, he is my partner. Well, not my partner, but he's my partner in the business and co-founder.
Shout out to Bellcross.
And I've known him for 20 years plus. And I initially wanted to start PvP just because of the way that I met him, along with our network of friends. I think it's roughly about 15 of us, but I literally met all of them through Smash Brothers. We'd set up at our friend Lita's house and just for hours at a day, just lose it in the 64 and just play and lose track of time. And I was like, well, why couldn't I do something like that here as a way of bringing people together? And, we started off at a bar, for a period. And part of one of the things that we ran into initially was the bar we were at was called Recess. And we did have a trans person that reached out to us about coming to the event. And one of the questions was, would they be welcome in that environment? And, I really had to kind of step back and look because, no, I knew they weren't going to be welcome and received. Eventually, we ended up leaving, that location, and we started setting up a Get Some Game on Commercial Avenue. Shout out to, Mary, Mr. Leon, and Philip. Very welcoming. I love that family. And when we did not have anywhere else to go and set up, they, with open arms, they accepted us. And like I said, I've always considered, what we do. I just, not really focusing on one particular organization or one particular, group, but just a big melting pot. I just want it to be a place where everybody can just kind of come together. You can talk trash or not, and just link up and just meet new people. And, in the course of the year that we've done it, I've met a lot of great people. And, a lot of them have joined the team. Unfortunately, COVID happened. So, the whole reason for what we do, it's been put on hold for right now, but even still, that really hasn't stopped us in some way, shape, or form. So, we do have a few of our people streaming and, staying, active within the community. But yeah, I just wanted, as cliche as it sounds, I just wanted a place where everybody can be together and everybody is included and represented in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. And to that point, we got a couple comments here. Bellcross is saying, yep, Smash 64. Mash Tater 93 is saying, you aren't alone anymore. We love you and you can't get rid of us. Love that. Mash Taters 93, thanks for the comment and thanks for the follow. Really appreciate that. As well as Levi 42, thank you for the follow. And Faulty Code Gamer for the bits. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Faulty Code Gamer is also saying definitely there are games that do a great job of representation. Borderlands, she said, as an example, but we have a long way to go. So let's talk about that. We kind of opened up a few things, and I see, Johnny, I think you're still with us. You might just be off camera right now because it's still telling me that you're here. So if you can hear me, maybe your camera's off. But we'll check in with you in a second. But Chris, one of the things that you mentioned was that idea about people feeling welcome, and I think that is really key. The gaming that PvP Hub is known for is kind of competitive gaming, and so to me that kind of brings up images of the esports scene, the competitive scene. And one thing we've seen on the representation side is we haven't seen as many we don't have as many celebrity LGBT players as we probably should. I mean, there are people that we can definitely name. Let's be clear about that. We're not saying they're not there. We have Sonic Fox, who identifies as queer, non-binary. On the fighting game side, one of the best, if not arguably the best, right? And fighting game players. Scarlet on the StarCraft side. There's many people that we can discuss, but still not necessarily enough. And so, Chris, I wonder if part of that is due to kind of the competitive, the trash talking nature where people may not be comfortable coming out or may not feel comfortable having that being a focal point. And does anybody have any thoughts? Chris, we'll start with you and then we'll kind of open up this conversation to everyone else.
I mean, I think the trash talking portion does play a part in why, especially when you have people like, I don't know if anybody is familiar with Low Tier God. But if you're playing against somebody like that and, rather than, it being a friendly banter, but they attack you personally and, you may be transitioning and having issues with, where you are, in your journey right now, or you may not have fully accepted, your sexuality. Like I said, you don't want to be, center stage, cameras around and be, potentially outed or being ostracized. For you being who you are. So, people give Sonic Fox a lot of grief because, he wears who he is proudly, but, I personally don't have a problem with it. He can dial it back sometimes, but, I think he's earned the right, especially with as good as he is with everything he plays, to kind of wear that.
Yeah, no, and Johnny, we got you back on here, so, we're all good on that front. I think we got a bit of a freeze here on our animation. Give me just one moment here, folks. Okay. Hopefully that will reset itself here momentarily. But I also should mention that I think the environments that we're talking about as well, you know, there's a lot of, I guess, kind of cis, kind of straight allies in the community that I should say I spent a decade in the activist world, nonprofit world, community organizing, doing that. And there's a lot of, I would say, like well-meaning people that sometimes feel a little kind of scared to kind of be in these spaces for fear of maybe saying something wrong, offending somebody. And I think kind of when I talk to people along those lines, I always tell them it's not what you think in that way. Have you all experienced that? Is it something you have to talk about on a regular? Again, not to say the onus is on you in any way, but I'm curious what you all have thoughts about kind of making it, showing that it's a space for everyone in that regard. And that trash talking, LGBTQ community trash talks as well, right? Let's be clear about that, right, Chris? Right? Like, let's be clear about that.
Yeah, I think the key thing is, especially when you get into a whole dynamic of a heterosexual person playing against someone who's homosexual or in the LGBT community, it's almost a fear and anxiety driven situation on both sides, because the heterosexual person is afraid of saying something wrong, but then the person on the other side of the spectrum is afraid of their opponent using their sexuality or their personality as ammunition, which is how they can get attacked so easily, and it's the fastest way to break that wall down. So it's, in my words, I think it's a two-sided kind of situation. But I guess the key thing to know is, if you're just playing and you know things aren't malicious, then I don't see anything wrong with it. But like the moment you can sense some things are getting a little bit out of control, that's when it is almost our job to say, hey, that's not right, and here's why, fix it so that it doesn't go any further.
Yeah, we got several comments on that as well. Jonas Brasco said Ricky Ortiz as well. She took a lot of abuse when she transitioned. Scarlett Aeon saying seeing representation in professional gaming world is important, and in the games themselves, kids, teens, adults, etc. can feel so much better if they see themselves in the media they consume. Jonas Brasco also saying LTG is the same league as DSP. He's not even worth mentioning. I don't know if I'm following fully there. Some of these I'm just reading like hot, so hopefully these are all good right here. But Faulty Code Gamer also saying, exactly, D, I know I keep bringing up Borderlands, but when I found out Maya in Borderlands 2 was ace, the noise I made was not human. I was that excited. Yeah, let's talk about the representation side as well. I want to throw out a couple statistics here. This is from the most recent International Game Developers Association survey. It showed that from the gender and sexual orientation section that the industry is predominantly male, 71% identified as so, slightly less than one quarter, 24% identified as female, 3% identified as non-binary, and 2% selected prefer to self-describe as their response. And then in a separate question, we should say 4% of respondents identified as transgender. Regarding sexual orientation, 79% of respondents identified as heterosexual, 4% as homosexual, 12% as bisexual, and 5% selected the option other. And then one other stat we want to throw out before we continue this conversation. Nielsen did a study that only came out a few weeks ago, actually. And it said that, according to these results, that 10% of all gamers over the age of 18 identify as LGBTQ+. Any reaction to those statistics, and maybe whether, to Keelan's point, as well as the comments, where the representation we have also is an indicator of the representation we have behind the scenes doing the creation of the games themselves? Any thoughts? Do those statistics surprise you? Do you have thoughts about ways we can increase diversity on the game development side? That's open to anybody. I know we have a big group here, so I'm going to ask anybody.
The 4% was a little shocking to me, I guess. And maybe that's just because I surround myself with, all my friends who are gay and gamers.
Mm-hmm.
you kind of see, the people you surround yourself with more in your life. But yeah, 4% sounded really small to me. I was at least expecting, maybe 10 to 15%. Just, personally from the groups I'm part of online. But again, I've sort of created my own little safe bubble. So it's definitely, my vision of the gaming world is definitely skewed towards, my demographic and who I surround myself with. But yeah, that just sounded surprisingly small to me.
Well, and I think what the other interesting aspect of this too is that when you look at the larger numbers and how it reflects worldwide, North American gamers are just like a stepping stone on those worldwide numbers, especially as it relates to our counterparts in Europe and Asia. I think and talking about that, Michael, I think the other aspect of what we want to talk about too is again talking about LGBT diversity, not only in our games but in consumers and production as well. Coming from South Florida, I don't have these numbers for the Carolinas, but I know for a fact that when we talk about Fort Lauderdale going all the way to Miami, we're talking about 2 counties, 3 major cities, and within that spectrum, there's about $3 trillion of buying power in the LGBTQ community. And when we talk about how invested this demographic is in their community and how they want to support LGBTQ operated businesses, I mean, I think it blows that number out of the water. And what's unfortunate is that there just isn't a lot of reports that we can run on these kind of instances, I mean, and that's, unfortunately what sucks about it. But, it is a very interesting number, and to see that, it is eye-opening, honestly.
Yeah, and I think that purchasing power, that's been a relevant part of the conversations that we had when we did Black Voices in Esports, when we did Black Voices in Gaming, Women in Gaming. I think that's something where we're seeing communities and individuals flexing their economic power in that way and demanding characters that are authentic. And so when we talk about that with the characters, I'm looking at the recent the nominees. GLAAD, the LGBTQ organization, has their media awards, and they have an outstanding video game category, and this is from the awards back in July. And the nominees were Apex Legends, Borderlands 3, The Outer Worlds, Overwatch, and The Walking Dead: The Final Season. I will say that, as somebody who prides themselves on having hopefully an encyclopedic knowledge of gaming to an extent, that we've definitely seen more new voices being represented, but I'm curious how you all feel that's been handled. So I'll give one example, and I'll open this up to everyone. Overwatch, for example, is simultaneously kind of lauded with characters like Tracer, Soldier 76, a personal favorite of mine, being gay, lesbian, but at the same time, people are also saying, well, why isn't it part of the main story, for example? Why was it part of a comic book? And so I've been, in preparation for this, I did a lot of research, and there is a seemingly divide where some parts of the LGBTQ community say, I'm glad the focal point of this character is not their gender identity, sexual orientation, what have you. And some people are saying, hey, well, now's the time where we need to make that a more focal point. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. And I'd imagine we'd have different thoughts potentially on this. And it doesn't have to be Overwatch, but what do you all think about that?
Yeah, so that's a great point, Michael. I mean, what's so interesting about this is that, Rainbow Six Siege has the same exact issue. You have operators or classes, rather, where it's in Siege or it's in Overwatch or it's in Apex Legends, where these characters have a backstory, but it's never really fleshed out. I mean, you would never know that the hunter in Apex is bi. I mean, that would just never come up in the storyline unless it was for the CGI updates that would come between patches and all that kind of stuff. What makes a lot more sense to me is the final chapter of The Walking Dead, where you have this deep and trusted exploration of these issues, these human issues that all of us deal with, where you're not necessarily dealing with the end of the world. What you're dealing with is how humans are interacting with this scenario and how they're going about their way and surviving. Really, it isn't about just a bunch of zombies eating people.
Sure.
It's about how having that in the world affects just the mental health of all these survivors, and how they proceed to interact with not only objects in the world, but with their companions and other folks. So that's my beat on it.
Yeah, to jump onto that, you talked about Overwatch and you talked about Rainbow Six Siege.
Yeah.
Those games are quite literally about killing each other, which it kind of brings it into an interesting dynamic where, yes, we appreciate that Soldier 76 and Tracer both have excellent backstories and they're part of comics, and like Tracer even has a little spray of her and Emily next to each other, which is adorable, but it's fun for that to be just kind of a side part for you to connect to these characters more, to want to play them more, versus fleshing it out into the story. I feel like it would take away from the fact that this is a story about heroes fighting villains, about attackers defeating defenders, vice versa, handling different situations. It's not part of the main game because the main game doesn't focus on human issues. Does.
That's an excellent point there. And so are there other games? Are there other examples? I mean, I'm thinking of like Ellie and... Go for it. Yeah.
I have one.
Please.
Sorry. I have one. Not many people know this, but in the Tekken franchise, which I'm also obsessed with, there's a character named Leo who is trans. They don't ever specify it. They don't ever talk about it. You have to read into the wiki of Leo to figure it out. But Leo is trans, and it's been known since Tekken 6, but right now they're on 7, but it's not really a big deal because the story doesn't focus around Leo. He has a little backstory, but sorry, I actually don't know the pronouns, excuse me. But it doesn't focus on Leo, it focuses on the Mishimas, so it's just kind of an interesting thing where it's a little tidbit, but it's not everything.
Yeah, I appreciate that example. I think, Zach, were you about to jump in?
Yeah, so a little bit different from what Keelan was talking about. Yeah. I think most of those games, and I could be wrong, but I think most of the games they listed in the GLAAD Award are all coming from heavily American-based studios.
Sure.
I myself am a huge JRPG gamer. All of the Final Fantasies, Tales series, Persona series, and they have an awful record of LGBT representation. I don't know if anyone watching can relate, but there was a specific scene in Persona 5, which is a very popular game, and I think the only 2 gay characters that come up in that entire scene are absolutely horrible caricatures of gay men that you see, and it really sucks to watch when you as a gay man are watching this, and it's like, is that what these developers think of us? Is that how they see us? And so I mean, I definitely think that American-based studios have done a great job of putting us more to the forefront of some of their stories and getting that representation in there. But I have noticed personally on a foreign level at JRPG specifically, they have a horrible record, and I love them, but it definitely stinks to watch. There's a game, Tales of Zestiria, that I've played that's pretty popular online, and I mean there are supposed gay couple in there, and it's not even canon, it's just the entire fandom just assuming that they are. So I definitely think that's a huge area in gaming that I have seen lacking representation, and when we are represented in those games, it's very much so an offensive stereotype. So that was just something that I definitely wanted to bring up.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and we should say even up until recently, a lot of RPGs had predefined like, this was a wearable item for a male character. This was a,
Right.
that if you wanted to enter a relationship in the game, this is still happening, I guess we should say, but there was a number of notable backlashes to this. Nicole, have you played any of these games? Kind of to Zach's point, kind of, I guess, more on the Western front. One of the things that differentiates Western RPGs is more freedom, less linearity, and more of the idea customize the character as you see fit. Any thoughts about that idea, about allowing people to express themselves not in a strict kind of binary way?
So I played Assassin's Creed Odyssey, actually. The male character that you can select, Alexios. There's a DLC that goes with the game where apparently you can choose, he can have like a female interest, or apparently there's a male interest for him. Final Fantasy VII, your main character, Cloud, he doesn't identify as gay, but there is a part where he kind of, he dresses up basically like transgender. But other than that, I haven't, it's kind of sad to see, like, most games when they have like LGBT characters, they're mostly like side characters. They're not really like, the only thing I can think of is Ellie in The Last of Us, like you said, Tyler in Tell Me Why, and there's just not enough like main characters.
Yeah, there's definitely not enough, for sure. Yeah. And I will give a shout out, by the way, to, I think, a phenomenal indie game, if you all haven't played it, called Gone Home. This is the central focus of the game. Absolutely remarkable game. I think Polygon actually gave it a Game of the Year award, the #1 game of the year of its release. Jenny, do you, to kind of talk a bit about more of this and gaming, and kind of on just in general the media front, I mean, is it an indicator of society's growth and tolerance and acceptance when these when characters are represented and it seemingly could be done in an authentic way, but then the character's gender identity or sexual orientation isn't brought to the forefront? Do you have like a kind of way of judging this, or how do you kind of feel to ensure that this isn't like a token representation, or that people are just doing this in a bandwagon way? Because we must say there have been accusations of that as well, like just throwing in an LGBT character to kind of appease an audience. Do you have thoughts about that? How developers can ensure that they are being authentic to the characters represented?
Well, I think stories matter. I mean, developers probably need to hire LGBT staff or consult with LGBT people in the community. I think that's huge. I think that's, whether that's script writing for Hollywood, whether it's game development, but anything that represents pop culture in any way, you really need to have authentic human beings involved with that community. Otherwise, you're getting a very superficial glimpse of the community. That maybe the character's a man in a dress, and that's transgender, and I'm going, that's not transgender. It's a man in a dress. And so there is that threat that when you don't understand the community, that you're going to have a more, I hate to call it cartoonish or comical deal. And you saw this with Hollywood, and I mentioned this earlier, is that I think as people become more aware, and there was a recent study done, and it was primarily done about the trans community, but it also applied to the lesbian and gay communities, that over 90% of the American public has a personal friendship with a gay or lesbian person. Less than 10% of the population personally knows a transgender person or a gender nonconforming person. So there is a learning curve there. And we are a small part of the overall community. We do have a big buying power, like Johnny said, but at the same time, we are a small part of the overall population, so some of the numbers, some of the things kind of suss out. And also, if the character's sexuality or gender identity isn't important to the storyline, having a token, almost forced feel to a storyline, and going, oh, we just got to have a trans person in this, or we got to have a gay man in this, that can go really awkwardly. It can go really bad. I mean, if it doesn't make sense, like if it's a shooter game, if I'm an assassin, does it really matter if I'm a trans woman or a gay man or a straight man? I'm there to shoot people. So it's got to make sense most of all, and I think you've seen that with Hollywood where they swung the other way and started to force feed LGBT stories. The recent reboot of Star Trek, for example, where they had Sulu's character actually be a gay male. And even though it was originally played by a gay male in the original series, but he played a straight male, and I think it was forced. It was awkward, and even the original Sulu, George Takei, said it wasn't necessary. It didn't make Sulu a better character by making him a gay male just to honor me, and he was actually kind of offended by it. And so I think we have to be careful about force feeding unnecessary LGBT characters, and at the same time, if we're going to have more of a societal representation, and it's going to be more of a social science fiction type thing, like The Walking Dead, for example, things of that nature, then then you want to know what the stories are of the people. You are invested into the characters, just like Tell Me Why. So I think, I don't know if that helps or hurts, but
very much
that's
so.
my take on it.
No, I think it very much helps. Realizing, I think we all agree that these stories need to be authentic, not simply kind of tokenized or tagged on. And I think also, to your point with the Star Trek example, I mean, just reinforcing the idea that there is a diversity of opinions in the community, and that there's not necessarily a pure right or wrong answer in some of these cases. In some cases, there certainly is. So it's kind of making sure you understand those. I want to read a couple of comments here. Mandrew Boss saying, yeah, Overwatch in particular is not a platform for story or character development in general unless you take the initiative to dig deeper. If you just play the game casually, all you ever do is shoot the other team and maybe hear some voice lines, but you never get any character development. Jonas Brasco saying, still better representation than Disney. And Andrew saying, yeah, I think those kinds of moves by publishers are thankfully changing in a progressive way over the years. Any thoughts in general about kind of media portrayal and to the Disney point, for example? I mean, we've seen some positive things, but we've also seen censorship in China, for example.
That's a really great example, Michael. I mean, I think we're living in an era now where LGBTQ diversity is at the highest point that it could ever be. But at the same point, I mean, we're still dealing with issues. For instance, Mulan, the leading actress is a pro-Beijing Chinese actress who's said a lot of horrible things about the LGBTQ community and about other demographics as well. So we're really stuck right now, in dealing with these kind of issues, and it's, how do we move forward and how do we deal with, these kind of things, because at the end of the day, Disney, for example, is a really great company when it comes to LGBTQ representation, and all that kind of stuff. I think in gaming, personally, LGBTQ representation is something that has just increased, dramatically. Seeing the characters that we're dealing with, for example, what Jenny was talking about earlier, with Ellie and all that kind of stuff. Going into Last of Us 2, to see the continuation of that story and to see these other characters being developed and they're not just being waylaid, and all that kind of stuff. It's really amazing to see, to consider where gaming has come in the last 20 years. From the Nintendo 64 and the games that we would see and the characters that we would see and where we are now is an astronomical jump, and it's really awesome to see.
I appreciate that for sure. Manager Boss, I want to thank you for your comment here. You wrote on a more general note. I just wanted to say I always love Potions and Pixels' relationship with Petra's in Charlotte. That was such an awesome venue vibe and relationship to host those pop-ups. Yeah, we absolutely give a huge shout out to Petra's. Petra's has played a historic role in the LGBTQ community, and we should say we've always, this is near and dear cause to us, like I said, with the activism role, and also we've historically worked with LGBTQ owners and community, from Hattie's to Peace Pipe, you name it. We feel the community together. So thank you for that as well. I'm about to get to a couple more comments. I know we're kind of at the halfway point of the conversation, so I'm probably going to start transitioning us to focus more on Tell Me Why. But any other kind of last thoughts about this in terms of representation on the development and event side and esports side, as well as representation of characters? Because I feel like we're going to have to save some of this also for next week's conversation, because there's so much more to unpack here, and we're kind of just scratching the surface. But Keelan, I see you're excited. Please jump in.
I was going to talk about Captain Holt from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, as my mother calls me. And Captain Holt is he's an out gay male who is the captain of the 99th precinct of the Brooklyn Police Department. And while the show may be a comedy, the way they portray Captain Holt in that show is absolutely amazing. He's monotone, he's stale-faced, he's like, I can't even like, I can't mimic how the actor portrays him. But there's still moments where he's hilarious, just like when he did Yes, Queen, and he just snapped, and it's so funny. But he still has his husband, his family. Like, you can see his development going in a comedic show, and that's one of the great examples of a very drawn out, very good LGBT character in Hollywood. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
And if I can jump in just real quick, Michael, I'm sorry.
Please do.
But that is the most perfect representation of what we've been talking about today, is that what the general American public needs to understand is that LGBT representation doesn't mean, somebody's, very flamboyant or very feminine or whatever it may be. Somebody can be an LGBT fire chief or police chief and still do an incredible job, but they're just living who they are. They're just living their life, and their sexual identity is just a very small part of their identity when it comes to their career or their aspirations or whatever. And what I'm so loving about Brooklyn Nine-Nine and gaming and all this, especially characters like Ellie in The Last of Us, is that these are not caricatures of our community.
Yes.
And that's what's so special about what we've been seeing in the last few years when it comes to LGBTQ representation in not only media, but in gaming, to see that these are not powerless characters who are dealing with these issues with their identity and all these. I mean, these are identities that they've already worked through, and we're seeing these characters now, living in just in their adulthood and who they are and all this kind of stuff, and it's just a part of their identity like any other character, and that's what's so amazing about it.
I love what you said there, and that's something I think when we have the conversation about Tell Me Why, to kind of unpack those historic tropes that we've seen, where there's so many of these tropes, right? There's websites just dedicated to them, of unpacking how characters in the LGBTQ community have been portrayed historically in media, and games being kind of the new kid on the block, so to speak, from an entertainment standpoint, certainly have their growing pains, but also have their opportunities to showcase.
Well, and I think also too, and I wanted to jump in real quick. And I think it again goes back to the creators or the writers or whoever develops the story. Would you have people on your staff that are LGBT, that are a person of color, any of these different legs of diversity and intersectionality? Would you have the story from them? And when they tell you the story, then you need to believe them, and you need to hear that, and it needs to resonate, because I think so many times that when we don't hear these stories, how can you write about it? How can you develop it from a cis male straight point of view, looking at a trans woman and saying, well, I know a girl, and then I'm going to write a deep character about this. How do you do that? Just as I couldn't write about the Black experience. I don't know what it is to be a person of color. How could I write about that and do it justice? So I think stories matter. I think diversity matters. I think if people, and I think people enjoy those stories, because I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine, by the way. That was a great mention and a fabulous character. And I think it's shown America that these type of characters are some of the most lovable and memorable characters, versus if you think about the original Psycho played by Anthony Perkins, and he was a transvestite killer gay male, and so much of Hollywood back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s portrayed gay men as killers and psychotics, or they end up being the punchline, the joke in the story, the silly, flamboyant, very effeminate man that couldn't be the chief of police or a captain of police like in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So, making us look more human and more believable and real needs to be done further.
Absolutely, and I think that just reinforces the idea how important representation is to this conversation. Again, on all sides, the creative side and the portrayal side. So I really appreciate that. And to that, before we transition to Tell Me Why, for those who watch, you may know I try to be a little bit of a gaming historian here, and I want to highlight a voice that many people in the gaming community are unaware of, and somebody that I often talk about with people, but not necessarily. In this case, this is a transgender woman, Danny Benton, who, if you look at the game she was credited under, originally Daniel Bunton. Then she had sexual reassignment surgery and then went by Danielle, but throughout went by Danny. So I'm referring to Danny. This was the name that she chose to go by throughout. So I want to take just a brief moment to celebrate her career. If you're not familiar with this game, Mule, this is a picture of Danny right here, as well as Mule, you should check this game out. It's incredibly influential. Just to give you one example here, Shigeru Miyamoto, of course the creator of Mario and Zelda, cited Mule as his influence for the Pikmin series. Will Wright dedicated The Sims to Danny Bunton. And there's Easter eggs like StarCraft 2 allows Terran players to call down multiple robotic workers called mules. But I want to give a couple historic things just to talk about the role she played in our industry. Her first game, 1978's Wheelers Dealers, was the first ever PC game to be sold in a printed box instead of a sleeve or plastic bag. That's quite amazing alone. Mule is significant for so many reasons, primarily because its multiplayer and its strategy gameplay was well ahead of its time. The game she created, Seven Cities of Gold, predated Civilization, Sid Meier's Civilization, and had many of the features ahead of that. In 1988, she designed Modem Wars, the world's first PC game that could be played across multiple computers in an online environment. In 1992, she designed Global Conquest, the world's first PC game from a major publisher that could be played across 4 computers online. So she is someone who has been inducted into several major Hall of Fames, and her games are often on lists of greatest and most influential games of all time. So while you may not know her work directly, chances are some of your favorite games, those developers, she's like, the saying like, my rapper's favorite rapper or whatever like that, right? If you're familiar with Merce or anything. So this is probably your favorite game designer's favorite game designer, that sort of thing. So I always like talking about Danny because of her role in games like Mule, but I thought it was especially appropriate for this conversation to give her a shout out. So please, if you get the time, definitely check her work out. Okay, so without further ado, I do want to open up to the Tell Me Why Chapter 1 conversation. So we're super excited about this. We will say to everybody watching, spoiler alert! Can we have the whole panel? Can we all yell this out loud together? Spoiler alert!
Spoiler alert!
For sure.
All right, we will be talking spoilers, but we think that's what you want as well. This is the point of the conversation. It's like a book club. We are going to be going through this. We have several people who are super excited to be going through this. First, we want to run a trailer for the game. So if the panelists don't mind muting just for this portion, we are going to run the trailer for Tell Me Why Chapter 1, and we'll get right into that conversation. So this is trailer for Tell Me Why Chapter 1.
Wow. I just got hit with a flood of memories.
Love you, Mom.
You seeing what I'm seeing?
Mom?
Alyson?
Yeah. It doesn't matter that they don't believe us.
We all believed that what happened that night was self-defense. But we couldn't be sure.
It doesn't matter that they kept us apart.
Brother, sister, we look out for each other.
It doesn't matter that finding the truth feels impossible.
We're all done with fairy tales.
The only thing that matters is you're my brother. And the only way to move forward is to keep looking back.
We've been getting these visions whenever we see or hear something really emotional. Everything we thought we knew about Mary just got thrown out the window.
She loved you.
She attacked you. We both saw it.
I thought coming here would be closing a chapter of our lives.
Nothing good comes from stirring up old memories.
We don't really have a choice about that.
There's always a choice, son.
I can't do this. Stop!
So that was Tell Me Why Chapter 1. We're going to kind of do a little picture-in-picture here. So we're going to keep that running on the side there. That is, of course, from DONTNOD Entertainment, the folks behind Life is Strange, published by Xbox. It is available on Game Pass right now. So if you have Game Pass, you can play it on PC or Xbox. And it is also available on stream. And there's talk of it eventually, the exclusivity maybe expiring in other platforms there. Wow, folks. Okay, we got a lot to talk about here. The trailer kind of gave us a bit of an idea of the story. Can someone jump in here and maybe elaborate on what we are seeing for those who haven't played but are watching and want to get in on the discussion, and maybe talk a bit about the type of gameplay that's involved here?
So this game follows two twins, Alyson and Tyler, who have been split up for 10 years. And basically once they reunite, they go to their old house and they start getting this sense that they can remember a lot of things from their childhood, which drives them to really find out exactly what happened when they were younger, what they remembered, what they saw, what they heard. Everything comes into perspective, and you have the choice to view these things as you play as Tyler or Alyson.
That perfect. Do you work for DONTNOD, Keelan?
I mean, if they want to give me a job, that's absolutely.
That was perfect. And we should reiterate the fact, we said it at the top of the show, but just one more time because I see our view count's been jumping up. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate that. We should reiterate one more time that the historic significance of this game is that it is the first game from a major studio and publisher to feature a transgender main character, in this case Tyler, as Keelan said. So let's jump right into this story here and our thoughts about it. I kind of have a bit of structured thoughts, but I kind of want to get some initial reactions. I want to say my first thing real quick. I was so happy how well this was done, right? I don't know if I was the only one who was a little nervous about this, a little bit nervous, and I was I'm hooked. I'm all in for chapters 2 and 3. Any initial kind of reactions before we dig into the characters and the plot?
Yeah, so Jonathan here, I think the one thing that I was really excited to see was that we were dealing in gaming, especially over the last couple of years, with trans representation in games, most notably Last of Us 2, which was just released. And unfortunately, it got a lot of backlash because of the trans representation of one of its main characters. And what I love about this game is that, unlike a lot of other games where we see these trans characters represented, you know, and Last of Us 2, you know, it was all about this individual trying to find their purpose in the world and trying to deal with their identity, and if it was right, if it was wrong, you know, how do they come out to their family, all this kind of stuff. You know, we've seen that in gaming traditionally over the past few years. What I so loved about this game and how it dealt with the trans experience was that it kind of took a back, like kind of like a back end to it. You know, the whole thing of Tyler being a trans male was a very small part of the story when you really play it. I mean, this is an individual, this character has already transitioned. I mean, you're already seeing clues in his room where he's already taking his shots. He's already reading the, you know, the transgender guide to masculinity, you know, for instance, and all these kind of things. I mean, it's such a built up character, you know, which we literally have never seen before in gaming. And it's truly momentous because of that reason. We're not putting this trans character into auspicious acts of violence. We're not expecting this character to come to terms with their sexuality or their identity. You know, we're dealing with a character who is so centered on who they are and is so built around their identity and is so comfortable living that perspective and living in that skin in a way that we've never seen in gaming before. And I think it truly is something just so monumentous to have a studio like Xbox Game Studios to be publishing a title like this. I mean, I'm hoping that this is going to open the door for a lot more LGBTQ plus stories to be told in gaming.
For sure, and we should say the reviews have been really solid about this. If you're on the sidelines about it, I think we. I don't want to jump ahead here, but I think we're all kind of giving the thumbs up to recommend this, to at least play, to spark the conversation. I enjoyed it on all fronts. Everybody seems to be giving it some thumbs. Any other kind of reactions overall to the scope and theme here, Zach?
Yeah, so I thought something that was really interesting was seeing the reactions of other people to Tyler and his transition. Specifically, I think it was Sam and Sam, the guy that was watching their house, and then the guy on the ferry as well. Just seeing that sort of, you know, awkward interaction was really eye-opening to me, as that must be sort of a daily part of the training experience of people, you know, if you haven't seen them, not recognizing you, or, you know, not really knowing how to handle, you know, your transition. That's, you know, something I'll never experience, and it was really interesting getting to see that through the eyes of that character. You know, Jenny, do you have any experience with things like that?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, I dealt with this in my life, and I had family members and friends that knew I had transitioned before I saw them again. And just like with the character Tyler, everybody in that town knew about Tyler's story and his sister's Alyson's story, and knew that Tyler had transitioned. It was public knowledge. And I think the shock when people would see him and say, "Oh, you actually look like a man," and I get that same reaction, like from family members and even my own children. I do have grown children, and my middle child, that's 22, said, "Wow, Dad actually is pretty," you know, things like that. You know, you get these reactions like, "Oh, I'm really surprised that you're so feminine," or this or that, and so it was a very authentic part of the game, like the experiences, the reactions, the way that they treated Tyler, the way that Tyler, you know, reacted back, was very true to form what a trans person goes through. It was not hyperbole. It wasn't ridiculous or over the top. Tyler obviously been transitioning for quite a while, because his responses were very calm, very matter of fact, pretty much the way I react to things as well. So it really, it made me think about how I navigate society and kind of forgot about some things, because I have been out for so long.
And to Jenny's point, I was, kind of going into it thinking it was going to fit this whole stereotype of what it was supposed to be. So I did go in ready to cringe, and it felt very authentic. It didn't feel forced. Like Jenny said, even in terms of the interactions, with people seeing Tyler after the 10 years, it was, again, very authentic. So, I appreciated it. And the story, definitely loved the story more than I thought I was going to, especially the way that the chapter ended. Not going to spoil anything, but yeah, it was pretty dope.
Yeah, we're here for spoilers. Maybe we're going to wait on that specific. Let's maybe hold off on that specific one, but I think one spoiler we almost just have to get right out of the way here is one that Scarlett Aeon's mentioning in the chat, and I should say thank you for the follow as well, Kid Fortune. Really appreciate that. And for hosting views, Good Sport 168. Thank you. Scarlett Aeon is saying, I love how you think it's going to be a big part of the story because of the whole thing with Mary Ann, which is their mother. But then you realize that it's not exactly what you think. So let's get to that, but let's do a couple quick comments right here. Scarlett Aeon is also making an interesting point here that is worth thinking about. Tyler also feels like he knows more about who he is than Alyson knows who she is. That is really fascinating right there. Darth Sabulba says they did that very well. So before we get to the Mary Ann plot line, I think that's a pretty profound statement, honestly, and it goes kind of to what you were saying, Johnny, earlier. Nicole and Keelan, you want to kind of weigh in on that? That almost feels like it had to have been a developer choice. Maybe not. What do you think?
It seems that I instantly fell in love with Tyler from the start of the game, and his confidence, and like you could tell he knows who he is. But with Alyson, even throughout the whole game, I'm not going to say anything about the rest. She seems very like conflicted, and she's got obviously a lot of issues going on in her head, but she doesn't. I didn't get that same kind of confidence that I got from Tyler. Like I said, he knew exactly who he was, and he felt right, in his body and stuff. But I didn't get the same feeling from Alyson. She's definitely got some stuff going on.
See, I agree. I definitely agree to that, and I can almost say that as you go into the flashbacks of when they were younger in chapter 1, you can still see that young Tyler is very, very, very sure of what young Tyler wants.
Yes.
Like absolutely, like save the wildlife, save the turtles, all of that. 100%, like eco-friendly, not wanting to do anything that causes anything major. I could tell right from the get-go that young Tyler knew what they wanted, and then when you see older Tyler and you see with the wispy haircut and the fade in the back, like he looks like a man, and you get to a particular scene with a guy named Sam, and you have the choice to earn his respect as Tyler, and I think that's just awesome, where you simply say like a couple sentences and it's like bam, like he respects you now as a man, and then no more spoilers. No,
please. Again, all spoilers. That's all we're doing here. And I should say that I have all of the decisions, the stat decisions, screenshots of those. So I'm planning on us going through each of those, and maybe you all can share what you did in that case. I think I heard either Zach or Jenny was jumping in.
Yes, I sort of have a point about the spoiler is, I think it's interesting because, a lot of, when I hear about the trans experiences that they felt like they were living a lie. And in this, it's just great literary writing because in this case, it's the cis person who has actually been living a lie.
Yes.
She's the one that has to pretend that she has not killed their mother, and it actually was.
Oh, we're going into that.
Let's go into it. Let's do it.
Okay.
We're doing it.
It's very interesting to me that, Tyler, who is the trans person, who has known who he is from the start, and Alyson, is the cis person, and again, she's been the one, living the lie her whole life. That she's.
But see, I do slightly disagree with y'all in a certain way, from the fact that when Tyler took the fall for the killing of the mom. The one thing is that Tyler also got to escape to that home and escape that town and escape all the judgment, and Alyson was left behind. And it very much talks to the psychology, because I think this is more about mental health, wellness more than just transgender issues. Is that when you're talking about a mom that was unwell, and very obviously unwell when they do the flashbacks and some of the things that she says and some of the things that like Tess and the other characters talk about the mom being unstable and not quite right in the head, and allude to even a possible substance abuse, alcoholism as well. And then you talk about Alyson, she was left behind, and then she didn't have contact with Tyler for 7 years. And so she was there with a brand new guardian that took over her life, and she was isolated from her twin, which is very traumatic for twins.
Yeah.
And so she never grew past that 11-year-old. She was still, in a lot of ways, even though she's 21, she's still very much a vulnerable 11-year-old girl. Tyler got to go transition, develop naturally with minimal judgment and on kind of an island, and so to speak, and even talks about how happy he was to get sent away and got to develop naturally. And so I think it's an interesting psychological study more than anything, I think. And I think that's why she's wanting to escape out of that town. And she doesn't have fond memories of that town. She goes, I've been stuck here in this swamp for 10 years. And Tyler, you got to go away.
That's really an incredible point, Jenny, because not only are they living in a small town in Alaska, but when you consider that, Alyson's guardian ends up becoming the same person who put her, now brother into prison for 10 years, and that is now the guardian. I mean, her guardian is the chief of police. It's really interesting because as you play through part one, you can very obviously see that all of her decisions are based around wanting to be within law and order, within thinking the best of people and all of this at the detriment of her own brother, who has been so assaulted by this system for 10 years, and she's willing, to put her brother at the end of this barrel almost, throughout chapter one, to kind of goad this, him into this system and saying, just listen, just go with it, just agree with it. Let's just get over it. When you can't just say that to people. I mean, especially people who've lived such a traumatic existence. I mean, you can't expect to get over it.
Y'all are bringing in your A game here. I'm loving this. This is going really well. Keelan, please jump in, and then I want to read a couple comments here, and then we'll keep it going.
Okay. Short point, jumping off of Jenny, I thought it was really interesting. This isn't a spoiler, but once you finish the game, it shows the suicide awareness hotline number on the screen, and I just wanted to add that as like a little bit of a point that I love. And then jumping off of Chris and Johnny, when they're on the ferry, and Alyson hands Tyler the ring from Eddie, you have the choice of accepting it, not accepting it, or throwing it in the lake, which I thought was hilarious. I accepted it, but I didn't put it on. But Tyler had it in his pocket for me. But it was one of those things where you can see Alyson truly just wants things to be right between Eddie, the officer / uncle / guardian or whatever of Alyson, and Tyler. Like, her entire character arc in chapter 1 is making sure that she has her family back because her brother's coming back in town, and he has this tension with Eddie, and so he's trying to make sure that she's trying to make sure that these two can at least tolerate each other in the first chapter, which I thought was a great thing to do. But I also feel like that's very mature of her, because a lot of people that I would know from small towns would say goodbye to either side. Like, they would not try and find the collaboration there.
Well, and I think, people pleasing is a definite want to say symptom of mental abuse too. I mean, you can definitely tell that they were mentally abused by their mother growing up. And that's a very, common trait of people who, have survived abuse, is that sort of that people pleasing attitude to de-escalate the situation because they're traumatized of, those very, high intense situations that they've put in. So, I mean, it's just very great, realistic writing all around. I can't say enough positive things about it. It's very well written.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I also think too, one important note again is because she never got to grow past her trauma. She's trying to get rid of this house that their mom owned, and is just trying to make the best of a bad situation that she's been mired in for 10 years. Whereas Tyler got moved to this group home, got all the therapy, got the transitional therapy, got all this work done, got to live really the best life, honestly. Tyler, in a certain way, came out of this smelling like a rose, and she never got to leave Murderville. She constantly saw reminders of their mom, constantly saw, she lived with the police officer that investigated the murder. I mean, so you're talking about somebody that basically had a trauma that's kept them at 11 years old. And she's just ready to get out of there, get that house cleaned up, and move to Juneau. And you can see the urgency of, hey, let's just play nice for a few days. Early in the game, let's play nice. Let's get out of here. I'm done with this. I'm done with this life. I want to move on to what you moved on, Tyler. And why are you being so selfish? Why do you investigate something that's already open and shut? And so I think that's a very important point.
I mean, but I still felt like it was a double-edged sword too, because I mean, Alyson essentially got off of the hook too. So I mean,
yeah, can we go, just so our audience understands, can one of you kind of go into like the two big like points? I'm thinking there's kind of two big moments in this, at least two, there might be more, but I'm thinking two like big ones that are very revealing. Hopefully you all know what I'm talking about. Keelan, do you want to jump in and kind of describe those? I think we need to just like lay it out for everybody and then just really go into it.
Okay, so there are two big points that Mike was talking about. The first big jumping point to me that helped me realize what was going on, but I didn't put the pieces together until right at the end. You end up being in the police station with Alyson and Tyler, and they end up kind of going into areas that they shouldn't be by themselves, and they have a memory in there of when it was young Alyson and young Tyler, and they have a conversation of where Alyson says, I don't want to live a lie. And Tyler says, but you have to. Mm-hmm. That right there is such a foreshadowing moment that I didn't realize until it happened. And then that led, once they left the police station, it led to the full flashback of what happened that night. And what ends up happening is Alyson cuts young Tyler's hair with scissors. And young Tyler runs to the mother, Marianne, who is carrying a shotgun. And she loads it, and Tyler sees this, runs out of the barn, trips, sees the mom behind her, and sees this mysterious, mystical figure called the Mad Hunter. Oh, baby, you just have to wait for that one. And they end up running towards the pier to their house, like behind their house, and young Tyler is on his knees, crying, and you hear Marianne saying, I'm going to kill you. Young Tyler calls for Alyson, and Alyson comes behind the mom and stabs her in the back with scissors, which ends up with Marianne falling into the lake. And that's the whole backstory. That's how you end it. That's how you end chapter 1. So when I'm telling you,
honestly,
and I think
tears.
Another sort of big point was, I think Tyler grew up thinking that his mom killed him because he was trans. And then they come to find out through their investigations that was not the case. So that was another big point that like I just couldn't even imagine,
those are the two I was
thinking that, that you have this whole story that has been, confirmed and, nailed into your head that this is what happened. This is why she did it. And, then you come back and your whole world is sort of, thrown for a twist. So that was the other big, point for me as well.
Absolutely. And we got a few comments here I want to read from those participating. Thank you all so much for participating. I do want to say I saw the conversation between Jonas Brasco and Kid Fortune. You guys both made some very good points. Since we're already kind of in the Tell Me Why part of the conversation, I will make sure we get to those next week. I really appreciate y'all including those thoughts. Specifically here about Tell Me Why. That was a twist I wasn't expecting, Scarlett Aeon is saying. She is saying it is also mental health for sure, considering that Alyson tries to insist that she's fine and doesn't need therapy. Side note, I think everyone should talk to a therapist at least once. Darth Sebulba saying that's the truth. It helps in ways you never know until you do. Scarlett Aeon's also responding saying, but did she? I think she's responding to the point about Alyson kind of I'm assuming kind of living in Murderville, to use Jenny's terms. She couldn't get the therapy she needed to get over killing her mom, and she also didn't have the support of her more confident twin. Yeah, I think that's kind of reinforcing that piece there. Any thoughts about that?
Well, importantly, that twins always have that bond, that unspoken bond that they have. So she missed out for that for 7 years as they were separated. And I think that there was a lot of resentment towards her guardian father figure, but also the fact that it was a male cop raising a young girl turned woman with probably not a lot of nurturing skills, and you can see it in her character because I think she has a very stunted view of society and of things. And then also too, I think a very important point, the store owner Tess, how she's involved as far as the concerns about the kids, the nosiness, the intervention, that's gonna, that seems to be a conflict there, and maybe questioning whether Marianne is a fit mom. Trigger, in one of the backstories.
Yeah, can we go into the test part? Can I?
And also,
no, please,
I do want
Jenny.
to say one more thing.
Yes, please.
I am a big fan of therapy as somebody that has had to go through it twice in my life. Once for anger management in my 20s, and later on for transitioning. Anybody that's hurting, please seek out support groups, therapy, one-on-one therapy. Huge fan of that. There is no shame in that whatsoever. I consider myself one of the strongest human beings on the planet, and I've been to 2 different sets of therapists in my lifetime with zero shame in that.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Definitely appreciated. Jeffrey Marcus on Facebook, I see your comment. Thank you for that. I will make sure that's in the next show. So join us next week. And everybody who's watching right now, we really appreciate it. We will be continuing the conversation. Don't leave. We're still talking here. But next week we will continue the conversation. And if we do not get to your questions about things other than Tell Me Why, I promise that I'm recording that and I will get that in there. Johnny, I think I saw that you were about to jump in here.
Yeah, I mean, just building off of what Jenny said, I mean, before I say what I'm going to say, I mean, again, what a lot of people have issues with therapy. I mean, it's such a great, just part of your daily maintenance with who you are and how you go about life. And I think it's really important. So with that being said, I mean, I think the whole dynamic with Tess, and you're really during that whole segment within the convenience store where you're really trying to bring it out of her, where you're trying to go through all of this stuff and figuring out what is right, what is wrong. It really sets the stage for the rest of the game.
Yes.
Because what you begin the game thinking, well, okay, hold on a second. The twin is obviously going to back up Tyler and how their perception of world events and what happened 10 years ago happened. As soon as you get to the convenience store, you figure out real quick that that's not happening. That each twin has a very direct memory of what played out and what led up to Marianne's death. And what's so incredible about this game is that you can sit there as the character and decide which twin has the accurate description and build up towards either side. Whereas Alyson's character, who's been raised by this police officer, who's been told by, all these other citizens in Delos Crossing that, well, hey, maybe there's something else here. Maybe Tyler was at fault. And, and then to swing the camera back and pan the perspective over to Tyler and see just the horrors, just the horrible things that Tyler had to go through in transitioning and dealing with his mother, and seeing all these just really just frightening flashbacks. It really gives you pause. And what I love about this game is that the way that it gives you that choice. It's such a personal, just deep choice, an emotional, crushing thing to make these decisions in this game, unlike honestly any game I've ever played. And to know that, you have this trans experience where, you don't have to go through the game where it's obviously detailing one perspective over the other, and you really have to choose what's right and what's wrong, or what from your personal, perspective maybe, to delve into this game. I mean, it's one of the most fascinating things I've seen, and the game really does pick up, as Jenny said, with Tess in that convenience store.
Yeah.
For real.
And we got a lot of comments specifically about that, with Tess saying, Tess made me so angry. No conversion therapy, ma'am. Tess was just judgmental without thinking she was being judgmental and thinking she was helping. There is a negative stigma on getting help. Makes no sense. A lot of people agreeing with that. Bellcross making the point, especially for black men. Guys, we're getting a lot of comments here. I'm going to try to keep up with this, but I've been going to therapy for almost 2 years for a lot of issues I've had since I was a child and stuff in my adult life. It has greatly helped me. Appreciate you sharing that. Thank you so much. The idea of being strong and just praying about it or dealing with it yourself seems to be a staple in the black community in the South. Honestly, I'm looking for a therapist again. I honestly need it on the regular. I was getting it in college, and then life happened. And last comment here, I'll read really quickly. All men are expected to not be weak, and somehow admitting you need help is weak. So I think we have a few. I know you guys want to jump in here. While you guys are talking, I am going to throw up the Tess decision point so people can kind of see a bit what we're talking about here. Chris, did you want to jump in on that?
Oh no, just the fact that I was triggered during that scene. Like, I was just triggered. And I tried my best, even when it came down to the section where you had to pick and choose which memory you want to go with, not to pick from a personal aspect.
Yes.
Because I was pissed. Like, I was legitimately angry. And it just primarily because I can identify with it. But then I guess at the same point, like I said, again, I appreciated the game and the story because it felt authentic. And if you can pull that emotion out of me, you're doing your job right. But yeah, wasn't for it.
When it came to like having to choose between the two twins' memories, I thought back to the other DONTNOD games, especially in the Life is Strange series, especially in the first game. Oh my gosh, you have so many important decisions, and when you got to choose which memory you wanted to believe, I have always personally sided with Tyler. Always, and here's why. Okay, so I have plenty of trans friends. I have 4 friends currently going through trans male therapy, going through testosterone, and I have 2 friends going through estrogen therapy. So when it comes, or was it? Is that correct, Jenny? Before I keep going.
Yes, I take estrogen and I take blockers that suppress my testosterone.
Gotcha. So I have a lot of trans friends who I know are going through different things all the time, and I know a friend who has went through conversion therapy. So when I said I was triggered, I was ready to throw my very clean white controller at my television. I was so ready, but I was like, I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to be calm. And I chose Tyler's side, and it ended up, I didn't know that it would affect the twins' relationship, which you'll see at the end when you go through it. But the fact that Tyler was pleased that Alyson sided with him, I thought it was really awesome. How it can affect your relationship with the people who you have. And I really thought during that whole convenience store scene, we haven't talked about Michael. I love Michael so much as a character, and I think my favorite part about Michael is the fact that he knows he has a chosen family, in which case he brings to Tyler, hey, I'm part of a chosen family. Like, this is These are the people who I
Let's go fishing,
identify
bro.
with, associate with. Too late in the story, like too far in the story for me to talk about, because then I'll keep going.
Yeah.
And I've finished the whole game, so I'm trying to avoid every single spoiler that I can. It's like it's going through my head, but like you have Michael, who is just like, hey, I see you're transitioning. You're a pretty cool dude. Join my chosen family, which is awesome to have someone who's just like, hey, like I think you would fit really well with these people who I know are good people because they've taken care of me, and I know that we can take care of you as well. And I just think that's so awesome. And I also think that it's super freaking awesome that you can have a romantic interest with him. That's not a spoiler, I promise. You see it a lot. You see a lot of like that little connection in the first chapter. I love me some Michael. He's my second favorite character.
Well, if I can build off what Christopher was saying earlier, I think what's so incredible about this game, especially about Chapter 1 and the subject material that we're dealing with, you know, especially considering that most of us here on this panel are LGBT, is that a lot of us have that same story. You know, if you change out Tyler with myself, you know, a gay Latino, you know, my mother passed away when I was very young, and my father went to war in Afghanistan, and I kind of had to figure it out. You know, there's a lot of other people who have that kind of similar story where one parent just wasn't there, and the one that was, you know, just wasn't up to par, you know, whether it was alcoholism, whether it was addiction. You know, my father was an alcoholic, you know, when he came back from the war, and I had to deal with that throughout my entire adolescence, you know. And, you know, when Jenny and I were playing the game together, you know, Jenny made that point where it's like, you can literally substitute that trans story with any other story and it would make perfect fucking sense. Because for me personally, I mean, you know, I lived in a small town in Florida where I was figuring out who I was and going through all this whole same experience. And it was so refreshing to play a game like this where where that character wasn't being beat up or downtrodden, or they were figuring out who they were, or they were just so powerless, you know, in this game. I mean, Tyler has power. You know, he's a powerful character who knows who he is, who isn't stepping to anybody, you know, who is going to do what he needs to do. And that's what I really loved about the aspect of this game and how it represented our community.
Absolutely. I love that. And Nicole, a quick question just to take us back one moment with the Tessa stuff and linking this to what Johnny was saying here. Can you kind of give a bit of a description for the audience, a bit about this mystical kind of power between the two twins? You know, in general, I feel like magic it can be something, a trope that can be overly used or a crutch for poor storytelling. But can you give people an idea of what is this connection between the twins, and then also elaborate a bit more on the scene in the store where you actually have two different memories and what that might mean for the story and the relationship?
So they kind of have like two different things that they do with each other. So they have like a voice, basically it's like where they can like communicate with each other, like telepathy. And then they're also able to basically like visualize these memories that they had when they were kids. But the thing is, sometimes Tyler might see a different version of a memory than Alyson does. And that's kind of the thing in the store. I had to go back and look because I basically played through the whole game. Keelan, what were those memories that you had to choose? Because I'm blanking.
The memories were choosing between whether Marianne was sad or angry. I know one of them was angry, where Tessa had said, "Come talk in my office," and Marianne was angry and stormed out, and then Tessa had to calm her down and then brought her into the office. Or Marianne just kind of went straight in without really having anything to say back. That was pretty much all that was. But it was in regards to something that the twins didn't know about. So that's all you really knew at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we should say, I'll just throw in one other thing, because I know, Johnny, you and I talked about this on the phone in preparation for this. One of the parts of that scene was that, excuse me, in Allison's memory, she remembered the part about the debt to Tessa. And that to me was like an immediate different factor, because one part of it was like, hey, they might just have different memories based on like emotion and the tone and the feeling they were having at the time. But that brought in like some other factual information that made me like wonder if there was like a right or wrong answer, or if one of the twins heard that. Any thoughts specifically? I think I sided with Allison's memory for that example, if I'm not mistaken. I think I can put that up here. Any thoughts as far as the choice there and what that means kind of long term for the story?
How dare you?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we talked about, on that phone call. I mean, it is very obvious that, in that one sequence, there was a right and a wrong. Because if you did side with Tessa, but sided with Tyler in some later parts, I mean, your achievement at the end was still, Tyler felt happy that Alyson sided with him, in choosing that sequence of events. So it is going to be really interesting to see how it pairs out. I'm interested to see what Zach thinks, because we played that part together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think Tyler ended up being correct, because, I mean, when you talk to Tessa, like the conversation ends up being not about the debts, but about the fact that she was trying to offer conversion therapy. And we find out that, the mom was completely fine with Tyler being trans. And that's why she was angry, because she knew that that's what Tessa was talking about. I think we even saw in earlier memories, that Marianne was, fine. She wanted things to be put in the debt book. She was originally trying to pay off her debts. So I don't think she would have been mad if Tessa was trying to bring up, debt. So I actually do think that, Tyler was right in that situation. And it's definitely kind of a hindsight thing, because you do realize Tyler's right. But yeah, I in regards to what Keelan said, I've tended to side with Tyler on most things as well. And I think that even speaks to, what we've talked about how Tyler has been able to process things a little bit better. And, trauma definitely has an impact on your memories as well. And I think personally, I'll be trusting Tyler more throughout the game than Alyson, because I think Alyson is also still much more unsure about everything that went down, more so than Tyler, because Tyler has had the room and the space to like appropriately process everything.
So I want to be respectful of y'all's time, because I originally said this was going to go till 9. Can we stretch it out a little longer? If you have to go, you can go. So I want to be very respectful of that, and I totally am fine if people have to drop. But if people don't mind just stretching this out a bit more, it seems like we're getting a lot of good feedback, and there's still a lot of stuff we haven't touched on yet. So
I'm good.
And I wanted to jump in one thing
Please.
about the store scene. I think, again, it goes back to Allison's lived experience, that she's still living and reliving and rehashing all the old debts, all the old struggles. She's never gotten away from that. So, in somewhere in those 10 years that Tess goes, yeah, I helped your mom out a lot, as a passive aggressive kind of remark. People remembered her being 14 or 15 in that town, and they remember what her mom was like, with Sam, with the guy that was taking care of the house, those sort of things. So she constantly got those wounds opened back up. So she's going to remember the more, I guess, perfunctory or maybe more flawed versions of the mom too. She's going to remember that the mom struggled to make ends meet, that the mom was considered kind of a kook, the town kook, a town weirdo, because she probably kept hearing that for the next 10 years, whereas Tyler, again, got the benefit of being on this desert island over here. It didn't have to keep hearing that for 10 years. So that's a huge benefit in a human's development versus living in a small town where massive trauma happened. So we have to have a nod to that as well.
Great points. Can we talk about Marianne Can we go there with her? I have a bit of I feel a bit for Marianne, right, from the mental health standpoint. What do you all think about that? Especially that we know, again, just to reiterate the revelation that she was aware of Tyler being transgender. Keelan, I know you want to jump in on this, and then Chris.
I'm gonna say this. After finishing the game, again, not spoiling anything.
Be careful here. Be careful.
I'm not spoiling anything. I promise. I promise. After finishing the game,
yes,
I feel so much for her. So much. I'm not giving away a single thing. She doesn't deserve a Mom of the Year trophy, but Lord help that woman. That's all I'm saying.
Someone clip that on Twitch, please.
She doesn't deserve Mom of the Year, but she deserves. She needed. So when I first thought of her, I was like, okay, I have to give it to DONTNOD Entertainment for completely villainizing a character and then making that character likable. It sucks, but it's amazing, and I love every second of it. But when it comes to Marianne, I think the most interesting part is the way that you can kind of tell how when Alyson's saying something about Marianne, it's crude, it's straight to the point. It's like, no, you can't have this. Whereas if you see Tyler's point of view, it's kind of a, we can't afford that right now. It's a little bit more coddling, and even though Tyler had the most traumatic experience, I would think so. I personally think that if someone came running at me with a shotgun and it was my own mother, I would just do the same exact thing, be on my knees, just don't. But for Tyler to have the most traumatic experience between those two, to kind of see the coddling side of Marianne was really interesting. To see how she was still trying to be the best mother that she could. Meanwhile, Alyson just kind of saw that she just kept saying no and no and no and no repeatedly over and over and over again. You can almost see that dynamic coming into play with their memories.
Interesting. Chris, what are your thoughts about this?
I was very conflicted as far as her character, but I kind of came to a conclusion once they found the book in her room. I kind of came to the conclusion that I do not think that she was trying to kill Tyler. I think that she was more so trying to stop him because he was afraid that she had a gun. And if somebody's chasing me with a damn gun, I'm going to do the same thing. But I felt like that she was more so trying to calm the situation. But in the heat of the moment, things turned the way that they did. Again, I have not played the second part, so I don't know anything else. But I don't think that the story as it is right now is what they perceive it to be.
Well, and to a really important point, Marianne did not kill Tyler. She only was threatening him with the gun. Alyson literally killed their mom.
Right. But I also don't
she
think
had to live with murder.
But I also don't think that Marianne was loading the gun with the intentions to kill Tyler. At least
Correct.
I don't think so.
Can we get a show of hands on that? I'm very curious, just in general. How many people have the position that Christopher's saying where they don't think the mother truly intended to kill Tyler?
I think the bullets were meant for somebody else.
All right, Zach, I want that hot take. Give it to us, my friend.
I am a little conflicted because Homegirl was like, I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah.
Pretty explicit, direct take of action.
True.
So I guess I'm not sure. Part of me thinks that maybe I think that I forgot what they were calling it. The demon character has something to do with it.
Mad Hunter.
Yeah, I think maybe she was trying to kill that, and maybe she has visions of it being like possessed over her son or something like that. I don't know. I haven't played that far. I don't know. There was a very explicit "I'm going to kill you," so to me it seemed like she was going to kill him. So, but that was my thought.
Maybe she was aiming over his head. Maybe he was
To the open water. Okay.
And honestly, we've never seen before in gaming until DONTNOD came onto the scene. But yeah, I'm really interested to hear what Nicole thinks about these scenes too. I mean, it's just.
So the biggest thing for this story that really spoke to me is the sibling aspect, because I have a sister. We're not twins, but we might as well be because we're, just that close. But kind of also like, with having one parent that was, very abusive, and like, thinking of things that could kind of trigger, like, I think of things that happened in my childhood, and it kind of, I feel for Alyson in that aspect.
Yeah.
I think of things, and it kind of puts me in that funk. But I very the sibling aspect is what really got me with this game. And just seeing how like confident Tyler is, and just sure of himself, and just like he was my favorite character overall, and I fell in love with him like instantly. They did like a super amazing job with him.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. Also want to give a shout out to Mystic Tightness of the Athena Alliance. Thanks for sending your love with those bits. Oh, sorry, got something caught in my throat there. Thank you so much for the love. Really appreciate that. And thank you for checking in on the conversation. Chris, I know you were wanting to jump in a bit earlier. What thoughts do you got?
I actually have a question. I'm laughing at Keelan. He is struggling not to say anything. I've been laughing the whole time. He is struggling not to say anything. And I don't know if it had any relevance, but had they mentioned anything about the twins' father at all? Okay.
Nicole's saying yes. I want to hear it.
They have. Okay.
Let's hear Nicole on this one. Real quick, and then we'll get you in here.
That's why I haven't, like, when y'all were talking about what the Mad Hunter would represent.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Oh, but you've played, Nicole. Are you going to the chapter 2 territory here?
I'm done with the whole game.
Oh no! Yeah.
So
Nicole
that
and Keelan, we got to watch out for here.
That's why. No, you notice why I keep covering my mouth. That is chapter 2 territory. Okay.
Okay.
I will say this. I'm just going to change subjects completely on you after saying that. The biggest part of the game that I thought that was like absolutely amazing was the Book of Goblins. Did anyone read every single story as soon as they got the book, or was that just me?
I listened to Emmy on the Athena Alliance channel. She sat and just read the whole thing, which I
read the whole thing. Yeah. I loved every single story in that. I loved every single story possible in that story. In that book, and it was just so amazing because like you hear voice lines later on about, oh, I drew this picture, oh, I gave Marianne the idea, blah blah blah. I also find it very interesting how they never refer to Marianne as mom. Totally. They always refer to her as Marianne. I thought that was very interesting. It gave kind of like a step parent, like I don't claim you kind of aspect, but then like, anyway. Yes, the Book of Goblins was absolutely fantabulous. I read through every story. It took me 35 minutes because I kept going back to one specific story, but I'm not going to tell you which one it is because it goes into something later on in the game. So, yeah.
So we need to read. You're saying definitely, like, we need to read it through the full thing.
Yes, like, when I'm telling you, it's like, I may also be really, like shining a light on myself here. Back when I was a really young kid, when I'd get really, really bored of like video games or whatever like that, I'd pick up a dictionary and just read it all the way through. So we kind of do it like that, like in depth, read through that Book of Goblins. It'll be like the greatest. Firstly, it'll be the greatest feat ever to go through that much storytelling in one sitting, but also it'll help you later on.
Yeah, and we should say in the chat, people are saying, I want a copy of that book so bad. It's so cute.
Oh my God.
Cool to produce. Also, shout out to Mystic. I didn't realize, I saw your comment that you are dealing with power outage and hurricane issues. So I know you are broadcasting over from Florida. So I hope you are doing okay there. Sending our love your way. Yeah, the book, I thought that was a nice touch. I guess I'll show the princess riddle right here. I had to sit there and definitely read and break through, or not break through, read in order to solve the puzzle. Did everybody do the puzzle, or who busted through that door. I'm curious about that.
So Zach and I played that portion together, and we really had to put our heads together to kind of solve that puzzle. But no, that aspect was great to have that kind of problem solving in that kind of way.
For sure, 100%.
I'm ashamed to admit that I had to look up the door puzzle.
It is all good. No judgment here. It's all
Yeah,
good.
I actually think we solved it by accident. I know we got the first 2 ones, and then I just kept spinning the third wheel until it clicked on the one that opened.
So, fun little thing. Another thing, once you finish the game, this isn't a spoiler or anything like that, but if you do something specifically special is how I'm going to say, you get a secret code that you can put in on the website. And I got the code, and I cracked it, and it's really exciting, but that's all I'm going to say.
Keelan, you're the king of like setting up these breadcrumbs to get us like tempted just to play through.
He's got all the things, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so my entire thing, I knew I wanted to finish this game the moment I saw the trailer. And so I had a legitimate, let's see if I can find it. I had a website that had a countdown to when each episode would come out, and I played it the moment it did. And I was just, I was obsessed with the game. I'm still obsessed with the game. I wish there would be a second game, but that won't happen, unfortunately.
Whoa! Don't.
No, this literally isn't like
all right,
this
no
isn't
more
like a trailer or anything like that.
We're gonna have to put the.
Just go ahead and mute him.
Yeah, we're gonna have to mute you on this one. You're gonna. You're gonna warp my whole vision for chapter 2 and 3 here, but no, I am excited as well. And in fact, I think as we close this up, I am gonna show the chapter 2 trailer. But I just wanted to get leave a little space here at the end for any kind of thoughts, reflection about the game, personal, like how any last like kind of thoughts before we wrap up the conversation.
I think the writing is phenomenal. We've said it all, but yeah, just hats off to the writers because they did a great job.
For sure.
As I said before, the story was very authentic, and if you haven't played at least the first chapter, I recommend it.
Yes, and we will be streaming. We should say on this channel we'll be streaming chapters 2 and 3. I imagine some of our guests may be streaming it as well, or maybe considering it. Definitely, again, check out their social media information for more information. We have a question over here. Quick question. Tell me why it's only on Xbox and PC. Yes, correct. Xbox and PC. It is available on Game Pass. If you're a Game Pass subscriber, you have it right now. You can also get it on Steam. Any other last closing thoughts about any reflection on chapter 1 before we show the chapter 2 trailer? Jenny?
I think absolutely the depth of the characters, the understanding of generational trauma and the psychological aspect is so spot on, both relating with transgender people and outside of that with pediatric health, mental health care, and parental health care. There's so much to unpack there. We could do a 10-hour show on this thing and not cover all the bases. There's so much depth there, so much to unpack. It's fabulous.
Absolutely.
And thank you for Jonathan for including me into this discussion. I wouldn't be at this deal if it wasn't for Jonathan Barrio and him looking out for me. So I appreciate him and everything y'all do.
Thank you so much. And we should all more next week. And now I'll give a bit of a transition to our next event. So I'll say goodbye to our friends here, and I'll hit you guys up online right after this. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.
So thank you all for participating in that conversation. We appreciate it so much. I want to give you a bit of a reminder about the conversations we've had before. We've had Black Voices in Gaming, which you can still find on our YouTube and Facebook channels. Let me move the windows here. Sorry, 1 second, folks. And then we had Women in Gaming. Thanks, Mama Shack, for sharing the stream. I really appreciate it. Women in gaming with the wonderful people at the Athena Alliance. We so appreciated that conversation. Hope you did too. Custom game controllers. Again, all of these can be found on our Facebook and YouTube page. Games to the Rescue, where we examined how games are being used to fight against coronavirus. Black Voices in Esports. And of course, coming up, Hispanic Voices in Gaming in October with Julio y Nazario, a board game designer based here in North Carolina. And of course, next week, you definitely don't want to miss LGBT Voices in Gaming in partnership with our friends at the Athena Alliance, Charlotte Gaymers Network, and PvP Hub. Again, folks, make sure to follow those groups. They're fantastic. And then if you like this types of in-depth conversation, which we hope you do, then we hope you'll join us for Indie Game Club. Indie Game Club airs every Monday and Thursday. Mondays, we stream ourselves playing the game. Thursdays, we have conversations like this, where we like to unpack the games, break them down, figure it all out, and just have a generally good time. So please join us for that. Of course, we also enjoy playing games. It's not just about talking about games. We're playing games too. So we're playing them. We're playing every day of the week, but we got game nights organized Wednesdays and Saturdays, playing video games and board games in our Discord channel. So make sure to join our Discord channel. To join a friendly, welcoming community. Wednesdays, we also have our Potions and Pixels online league. This is where we do our Smash and Learn sessions. It's an opportunity to learn different techniques, learn about different characters, learn about different levels. It's a great way to level up your Smash skills. On Fridays, we typically have King of the Ring, but we've been modifying it a little bit with Queen of the Ring and Team of the Ring. So this Friday, we're doing a Team of the Ring online battle arena, which you can see the winners from the last event, Queen of the Ring. These were our 7 leading ladies, so congratulations to all of them. Hey, Keon and On, thank you thank you so much for following. Appreciate that so much. Really appreciate that. I'm assuming that's coming off of on Facebook here. Really appreciate that. We also want to let you know that we have a opportunity to play this Saturday. We have a silver tournament and our bronze tournament. The silver tournament is open to all silver tier players as well as all new players. If you're unfamiliar with our league, we do a ranking system in order to make sure you have the best experience possible, so that you're not just playing, somebody who's a brand new player shouldn't be playing against the best player in the state, for example. So we